Dust off your armor and sharpen your blades, because this time on Off the Tongue, we will be discussing dungeons, the Holy Trinity, and a recent interview with Brian Willer. Welcome to Ratzcast. Yeah!
That was your best intro ever. I'm gonna make a plaque that said Overclock, best intro ever.
Well, thank you, Stench.
And I'm not gonna give it to you, I'm gonna keep it on my wall.
Fine. So we're going to be discussing dungeons that entail ESO's take on the Holy Trinity System and creature mechanics within those dungeons. Lately, there's been some controversy on the forums about dungeons. You know, some people have been wondering if dungeons in ESO will be instance. Just to clear this up, there will be public and instance dungeons. Not to mention the open dungeons in Alien Ruins and Cyrodiil. So, there's going to be a whole lot of dungeons.
Oh yeah. I like the ones I can go kill
other people in. Yes.
Yeah.
Bury them at the bottom.
You're ruthless. Absolutely
brutal. So let's jump into ESO's take on the Holy Trinity.
Okay, so the Trinity mechanic has been a big standard in MMOs and in a comfortable style of play with many MMO gamers throughout the years. The Trinity consists of tank, DPS, healer. So what that gives players are roles when playing in a group. If you played WoW, you know exactly what it is, and if you're like me, you know the lack of was one of the shortcomings of Guild Wars 2, even though it looked good on paper. And a while back we were wondering if ZOS would go that same route or utilize the Trinity with ESO, but we got some insight in March's Ask Us Anything combat when Lynx asked the question, how important will Holy Trinity be in PvE endgame and raids? Will dedicated tanks and healers be required, or will light armor characters be able to utilize the dodge system well enough to serve as competent tank? Will healers need to focus entirely on healing, or will more offensive spellcasters be able to sustain his group via spot heals?
ZOS responded by saying, let's have some fun here. This is what one of our internal testers sent out Wednesday, February 27th. This email is unedited other than removing the ending of the letter, which would sound a little too self-congratulatory of the tester. Yesterday, in a lunchtime dungeon test, our group of 4, all at level 12, included 1 Templar with light armor and healing staff, with abilities focusing on healing, 1 Templar with light armor and dual wield, with Templar abilities focusing on healing, 1 Dragon Knight with light armor and destruction staff, and 1 Sorcerer with heavy armor and dual wield. This was with no real consultation with each other while making characters, other than ensuring that there was at least 1 healer. For the sake of the dungeon, we really could have used a true tank. The closest we had was the Sorcerer wearing heavy armor and using Unstable Familiar to get the monster's attention, but with no real keep myself alive abilities. But as for a group, we were eventually able to take down the Fungal Grotto bosses. More to the point, with 4 players making independent choices in ability and gear, 3 of the 4 main builds defied the standard templates, and yet felt perfectly viable in actual play. The players were each able to build a character to their own taste with class abilities as a supplement, rather than the rigid defining aspect of the character, and have effective characters. The main difference I see here is that your class does not decide your role.
Right, you can still see that the Trinity is still here, and it's a little more dynamic, it's just not based, like you said, on one's class. So in ZOS's article, inside ESO Dungeons, they show us what we can expect from a role side of things in a dungeon. So first up is the damage dealers, the DPS. Alright, first bullet point. Monsters will attack you. Don't panic and don't expect your tank to handle every enemy alone. You have a great toolbox to mitigate damage. You can interrupt, block, dodge while dealing damage.
I'm kind of thankful for this. I remember when I was playing my Hunter in WoW and I just stood back and shoot and it got boring. I'm just glad to see them making all the players more involved in the fights.
Yeah. So the next point is, focusing on one enemy at a time is helpful. Coordinate with your group and try to damage the same enemy, then move on to another. The longer the fight goes on, the more danger your party is in of running out of magicka and stamina.
Yeah, this was my strategy when I played Dragon Age. I set up my tactics in order to make my characters attack specific mobs, and usually the casters first, and then I would start single targeting with my entire group just to put mobs down faster.
That's actually funny because I thought of Dragon Age also when I was reading these. We know our stamina and magicka are going to be very important. Right. You know, it just makes me wonder, whoever thought forever full mana was a good thing in WoW, honestly. That makes no sense at all.
Yeah, it got pretty ridiculous. All right, another point on DPS. Area effect abilities are effective, but can be very dangerous. When you damage multiple enemies at once, you risk getting their attention and straining your healer. Be cautious when employing AoE attacks. That makes sense.
As long as I can remember playing MMOs, AoEs in dungeons is a bad thing.
Especially in a game where, the tank's not going to be able to hold everything at once, so...
Yeah, that's true too. Okay, the next one says, be careful of your attacks. Avoid attacking monsters in the back lines of a pack. Even getting too close to them can cause them to engage in the fight and even threaten to overwhelm your party. Yeah, this is nothing new for DPS.
Yeah, let the tank start the fight. People aren't going to be able to AoE large amounts of mobs at one time, so...
No. Now we're moving on to healing, and actually healing is really interesting. Make sure your party has at least one player that can heal the group. The more players that bring healing abilities, the less need there is for a dedicated healer. Coordinate with your group. You might even find that with the right abilities, each player can manage his or her own health. So what do you think about that?
I really like this feature because, sometimes it's really hard to find dedicated healers. I've had to drop a lot of groups just because we couldn't find healers, so, in past MMOs. So giving healing into the hands of the other players, it might be viable to actually run a dungeon without a healer.
Yeah, if everyone has the ability.
Yeah. Alright, so the next point for healers, magica potions can be a great boon, but make sure you choose when to use them carefully. Potions cannot be used in quick succession. This is something we had been wondering before and something that we had found.
Yeah, it was during PAX East, and of course, there'll be a 20-second cooldown, so you'll still have to use potions wisely.
Well, at least it's not the 2-minute cooldown, and I'm glad that you can use them without having to wait for the fight to be over.
Yeah, of course, it's not like Skyrim, where you can, pause the game and pop 4 different kinds of potions and then unpause.
Yeah, at a time.
Right, exactly. Next point. The tank won't be the only party member taking damage. This is intended, and you will need to watch the other party members carefully.
Yeah, this will certainly help alleviate UI healing, with mods like HealBot. Well, the healers will have to actually watch the fights instead of watching, the UI.
Yeah, like the HealBot add-on with the little squares.
Yeah, I'll make a healer just to experience this right here, because rather than target healing, because you're not going to be able to actually target allies, healing's done with AoEs and cones. So this will make a healing role very action-oriented.
It's been said that healing will have an AoE, cone effect like you said, and that got me thinking about how healing is going to work. Now, if there isn't a single target healing spell in the game, are AoE heals going to be the default self-heal, or will healers get a personal heal ability?
Just a heal for yourself.
Right, self-heal. To me it seems the cone effect heal, if this is how it is and this is going to be at launch, is the closest thing that we're going to get to a single target heal.
It's what it seems to be boiling down to, and I'm wondering how they're going to implement only 2 different types of heals, AoEs and cones.
Yeah, I want some more information on this.
So the last point for healing is that you're going to take damage too. Remember that you can interrupt, block, and dodge. Crowd control abilities that stun, slow, or otherwise incapacitate enemies can be extremely useful for healers, and so can damaging abilities. Damaging abilities? Well, maybe they're talking about the healers actually damaging?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. They're just not going to be squishy healers that can't freaking take on a mob. Is that they're going to be able to do damage as well.
Yeah.
Even in their healing spec.
Or they can switch to melee weapons or something along those lines in the middle of a fight. So healers that can do damage, what more can you ask for?
Hell yeah. I know a lot of people are going to be happy about that though. Also, think about boss mechanics. For an example, say we're battling a Daedric Titan, and a phase he goes through is to cover his body with his wings. And while he's doing this, he's regenerating his health, and at this point in the fight, since there's no one being damaged, all party members will have to go DPS him to keep the healing he's doing to himself to a minimum, and then switch back when he comes out of it.
Now, is that the way the Daedric Titans fights will go?
This is just an example I came up with to show how boss mechanics can be done with this type of Trinity system.
When I think of healers doing damage during boss fights, I always remember in some instances in WoW where we came to the last boss and all the DPS died and it was the tank and the healer. And you needed DPS at that point, because the boss was almost there.
Right.
And to have a healer that could do more damage, I mean, God, that would have been so great. And now we're able to have healers that can do that.
I've always felt bad for healers in certain MMOs, and, especially WoW. I had the urge when I was healing to run up and just smack the mob or boss a few times, get those mad deeps in before I had to fall back and heal again. Now healers will be able to switch to DPS and do damage when no healing is needed for a particular fight or whatever. I'm liking that.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Alright, so next up is tanking and the bullet points that they gave us.
That's me. I'm actually going to tank in this game. Yep.
You're going to tank?
I've decided that I'm
actually
going to tank. I think it will be a very good challenge.
I'm going to pew-pew. That's all I'm going to do. Alright, first bullet point. You won't need to get every enemy's attention. Every player can take a few hits from standard attacks, and they have lots of ways to take care of themselves. Many healing abilities affect an area, so your healer, if you only have one, should be able to take care of several party members. Yeah, so pretty much this is telling us that a tank doesn't always aggro every mob or keep the mobs trained on him.
I always hated that part of instance dungeons. It was kind of like, oh, okay, the fight's over. We just have to stand here and whack them all.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure.
so glad that they're alleviating the tank and spank with this.
Yeah, me too.
Alright, the next point for tanking. In a fight with a large group of enemies, a tank's ability to control the fight is critical. Stun the healers, interrupt the spellcasters. You're the best party member for the job, because your stuns and interrupts will tend to get those enemies to attack you back.
You're the best party member for the job. Does that mean you'll be able to take more hits while you're running around stunning them? What does that mean? Are you going to get special abilities for that?
Well, if your stuns and interrupts get those enemies to attack you back, it would be best for you to actually go doing this.
Okay.
To go stunning the healers and interrupting the spellcasters. There's going to be times when you're going to need other DPS to do, some of the interrupts and some of the stuns. It's just, the reason that you're the best for the job is because you're the one that needs to take the aggro there.
Right. Understandable.
So that kind of makes you the man in the room.
Honestly, you're probably the worst tank I've ever played with.
God almighty. I was the best.
No, you're horrible. I got witnesses.
Jeez. Yeah, it pissed a lot of people off.
Yes, you did. Alright, this is the last bullet point for tanking. You do need to stay engaged with tougher monsters, like bosses. They hit much harder, and your damage mitigation and extra health will keep you alive where other characters might die. Alright.
So overall, I think these deviations on stricter roles make this Trinity system seem more fun.
More fun.
Yeah, it seems that almost any class combo is viable in a dungeon. And it really comes down to, your finesse or other players' finesse. There's going to be a lot of experimentation.
Yeah, this Trinity system is adding so much more dynamic gameplay that, a lot of people want. And like you said, it will be more fun.
At times it may be harder, but it's still going to be more fun.
That's a lot of MMOs.
I hate to put this out there, but I really think that given this type of dungeon fights, this is going to crush.
I'm going to stay a skeptic. I'm very excited for the game. It has nothing to do with ZOS. It's just the past 7 years of MMOs have been a big disappointment for me.
You're not going to put your eggs in the basket, huh?
Oh, don't get me wrong. I want this game to succeed. I love playing these types of games, but if I'm willing to invest my time into a game, I don't want to get bored or frustrated with it after a month.
Yeah, I hear you. Alright, next up, monster mechanics.
Yeah, read this.
So here are some of the key behaviors you'll see from the enemies in dungeons that should give you a better idea of what you can expect. Enemies in any room in a dungeon are all aware of each other. When one is attacked, the others are alerted and prepared to fight back. We call this pack mentality. So by default, a pack of monsters spreads out and each enemy chooses a target. Player actions can change their targets to some extent. For example, taunt ability forces an enemy to attack you for a fixed duration, obviously. Attacking an enemy that hasn't been attacked recently can also cause focus to switch to you. Pack monsters don't all attack at once. Some immediately join the fight, but others prepare in the back lines before moving in. If you get too close to backline enemies, or if you attack them, they'll join the battle. So these guys are going to stay back in the back and not do anything while the other guys are fighting Like come forward and fight you?
Well, I've heard that, don't get me wrong, I mean, I don't have my notes in front of me, and this was a while back in our combat video, that the mobs will switch positions.
Yeah, I think I remember what
or
you're
the
talking
one
about.
that was in front fighting you.
Like
will
there'll be
fall back.
one doing melee, one doing ranged.
Yeah.
And if the one doing melee isn't really getting the job done, they'll switch. Or if the one doing melee gets too low on health, they'll switch.
Switch, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's a pretty cool mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the last bullet point here is, in general, enemies target the closest player that is attacking them. If they aren't being attacked, different enemy types choose targets differently. For example, a ranged enemy is more likely to target a ranged player than a melee enemy is. So melee's not going to run up on a ranged player. Personally, if it were me, given a PvP situation, I would run up on a ranged player. You know, the creature AI is a lot more advanced when compared to other MMOs.
No, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
I do.
I gotta give Maria Alaprando props for that. I know there's a lot of other devs that work on creature AI, but she is the lead, so.
Did I tell you me and Maria are getting married?
No, you're not.
Yep, we are. She doesn't know it yet, though.
Good luck on that. Are you gonna wear her in-game ring?
Of course. Think I was gonna wear your ring?
That's fine. I wouldn't want to wear your ring. All right, so moving on. Thank God.
So we came across a good interview with PvP director Brian Wheeler from the Angry Joe show. He told Wheeler that he didn't feel like his hits were connecting with the targets. He wanted to know if they were going to address that at all. Brian Wheeler stated that in a newer build they had been working on NPC and player animations that glance left or right when hit. They react to the direction a player swings. So it feels like a player is actually making contact when they hit, and even said that the screen shakes a little bit. Joe then goes on to ask if there will be improvements in the line of skill trees. Brian Wheeler replies by saying that every time you level up, you get to spend a point in health, magicka, and stamina. Then you get a point to spend in your class line. There are active and passive abilities. You can morph your active abilities after they have gained experience. For example, Mage's Fury is a sorcerer ability that does initial damage, and then a little damage later. You can make that window of time shorter, or you can make it hit harder and do an AoE. So the abilities themselves can change.
Like a burst, and then like a little timer, and then another smaller burst. That's kind of what it seems like to me.
Yeah, that's what I kind of get out of it too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I did message Joe about 2 weeks ago and told him I will subscribe to his channel if he changes his shirt to Batman.
I'm a Superman fan, so I'm okay with it. But that's just me.
Whatever.
Brian Wheeler did say in the interview that there will not be voiceover or VoIP, VoIP, in the game when Angry Joe asked him.
Really? Well, PC players will still fall back on Mumble, TeamSpeak, Ventrilo. But console players, I know they're getting that radio wheel for commands and stuff, but it's just not the same. That's going to be a shortcoming. Okay guys, going back to our discussion on healing, there's only going to be 2 types of heals in the game, AoE and cone heal. What do you think will keep the healers from just sitting back and spamming AoE heals? And do you think these 2 types of heals will be enough?
Yeah, let us know in the comments below. Alright guys, thank you for watching Ratzcast. This is Human Overclock.
And I'm Stench. See you guys later.
Peace.